Welcome to Relationship Unscripted. We're dropping truth bombs about the good, the not so good, and of course,
what the hell is wrong with your relationship?
You don't know what you don't know.
Or you may need to have several seats and get your life together.
Who does know? Well, we do. So let's talk about it. This is Relationship Unscripted with Dat Dude, your host, Coach Kenn.
Ain't no lies being told here today. It's Relationship Unscripted with Dat Dude, Coach Kenn.
Hey everyone, this is Dat Dude, back with your favorite podcast, Relationship Unscripted with Coach Kenn. And again, bottom line, it's all about growth. So today we're going to get a super dose of growth because I have a super dope individual. For those that need to understand just aspects of relationships, I have someone on here today with me that I am just a huge fan of, and I follow on social media platforms. I listen to her every time she drops content, and it's something that I'm going to give all of her information for you to follow her as well. But I want to make certain that you get a chance to hear from her. And so we want you, wherever you might be listening to this podcast, to make some noise and put your hands together for Aishia Grevenberg. Aishia, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Now, mental health professional extraordinaire, your accolades are well-founded, they're earned, and this is someone that has both feet firmly planted in the mental health field. But today what we're going to do, we're going to talk about something that she really planted some seeds with me indirectly. And it's in regards to ultimatums. Now, this is something we all deal with. This is something that we all deal with. So I wanted to get some understanding on this because as a coach, I hear ultimatums talked about a lot. And so we're going to talk about not only her story, but we're going to talk about just ultimatums in general, because I want to take this into a couple of different directions. So, Aishia, let's start with this. Tell us about how you came about with your content about ultimatums. How did you get to that space? And just tell us that whole story.
So I was watching the Ultimatum series on Netflix. And the premise of the show, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, is this what we're doing? And then I saw the age of everyone, 25, 26. And I'm like, well, this is me. What are they thinking about? They don't know anything. But then I said, you know what? I was the same way. And let me take a step back and not be judgmental. So I watched the first maybe 20 minutes. And Nick Lachey, who's like the host, says, okay, well, therapists don't recommend that you give someone an ultimatum. And I'm like, okay, so why are we doing this? Like, this is done. Like, you just said it. This is not recommended, but we're just going to go ahead and do the show anyway. And when I started to watch it and see the vulnerability of a lot of, and I don't want to call them kids because that's dismissive. I saw a lot of vulnerability. I saw a lot of identity confusion, which makes sense. I mean, 25, like, that makes sense. And so I said, I want to talk about it, but I also have the lived experience of doing something like this at that age. And you couldn't tell me anything. I thought I was ready for marriage. I thought I knew everything. And I saw myself instead of being judgmental. So I initially started out with the therapist, like, blah, blah, blah. And I said, whoa. That was me. That was me not too long ago.
Okay. Now, a couple of things, and slide me back into my lane here if I'm too far, if I drift too far out of my lane. Now, my understanding is that you were, at this time, you were in your 20s. You had decided that after 5 years of being in this relationship, that you were going to go to this gentleman and give him an ultimatum, right? So I want to start right there. Let me just ask you, because somebody wants to know, and I'm going to ask on their behalf, what were you thinking?
So let me paint this picture for you. This is before Barack and Michelle, okay?
Okay.
And he and I met in undergrad, and we were that couple in undergrad. So I'm president of the Black Student Union, okay? And, he fine. You already know me. How I do. So he's just fine as wine, sweet as summertime. That's what we say. You understand? And we have this agency, this authority, and I'm this big deal on campus. And then I went to Boston University to get my master's degree. So I graduated with my master's at 24. So I'm 24 years old. I have a master's degree. And in my mind, the next box to check is marriage.
Okay.
Right? That's the next box. And so at that time, the American dream was sold to me as you get your education. Okay, I got that. All right, now you go get a master's. Okay, boom, I got that. All right, now you got a Black man husband. There he is. Woo, got that. Now check that box and get that ring and then get those kids. And by 30, you go to brunch with your sorors. Boom, that's a happy life. And that's what I was thinking.
Okay. You decided, got up one morning, had a glass of orange juice, feeling good about life. Everything is going great. I got it all. Let me just go ahead and check this last box. So you get into your Aishia mobile and you go over to where he is. And I guess what I'm trying to understand is, what was your headspace? Was that your plan when you went over to him, or was it like a conversation that triggered the thought? So in other words, did his ego show up and then your ego's like, no, I got this, and you blurted this out? Or how did it lead up to you just saying, this is what it is and it can't be anything else?
There was a lot of pressure that I felt at the time to have a certain aesthetic. My friends that were white were getting married, and I was in their wedding. And, the bridesmaid, and I want to be a bride. I want my day. And so we went to my friend's wedding, and I caught the bouquet. And so, all my friends are like, when is he going to propose? Like, it wasn't, this is the pressure that women are under.
Right.
And it was almost like, it's my fault. Like, what am I doing that he's not proposing? So when is he going to propose? And I got the bouquet, and we're dancing and everything, and we taking pictures, and when is my day? And then people at work, oh, how long you been with your boyfriend? Oh, 4 years, 5 years. Y'all not married? And so then that's the feedback I'm getting. And the underlying message is, I'm not doing something right.
Okay.
Because if I was doing something right, then he would have proposed. And so I got tired of it. He dragging his feet, whoop-de-whoop. Well, every holiday that went by, I'm thinking, this is the day. It's St. Patrick's Day. This is the day. You know what I mean? It's like, it's Secretary's Day. This is the day. And it just wasn't happening. And so I was exacerbated. And like, what is happening with him? And he's very stubborn. Like, we're besties now, but he's a Virgo and I'm an Aquarius. And when I tell you we went like this, and I had it, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? What are we doing? Like, I have my master's degree. I want to move on. I'm not a student anymore. Like, I'm a professional. I want this life. And he was like, no, that's not what I want. He wanted to buy a triple decker. Where you buy a house, you live in the bottom, and then you rent the top 2 floors out. That's what his plan was. And he made it clear that was more important to him than marrying me. And I was done. I'm like, either you do this or I'm done. I'm leaving. And so I had it. And from a place of frustration, I said, I'm just going to drop this ball and let it be what it be.
So in doing that, you were willing to let the chips fall where they may. Did you ever think that he was not going to ride with your thought process? Did you ever think that? Or you're like, this is a slam dunk. I'm going to say this. He's going to do that. And then, we hear this wedding music in the background. I'm going to go ahead and tell my girls, give me about 1 more hour because I'm going to have all this locked down here in a moment. That was your thought process.
That was 100% my thought process. I never doubted for one moment that he wouldn't propose. Never.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay. So we're going to come back to that. We're going to put a pin in the story right there. Now, let's jump in. Let me pick the therapist portion of your brain in conjunction with real life. What do you think? And I don't know the answer to this, so I'm really asking out of sincerity. What is at the root of an ultimatum? I've had this conversation over the last several days. I can't get anyone to give me a clear answer or to anyone that would agree on anything. So what would you say is at the root of an ultimatum?
What I would say, from a therapeutic standpoint, looking back on that, there was a lack of internal boundaries. And what I mean by that is that we typically believe that boundaries are about other people, but I didn't have a boundary with myself, because once it got to that point where I was so frustrated, my boundaries had been broken months and months and months before that. And so my relationship with myself wasn't as solid as it should have been, because the alarm was going off at year 3.
Okay.
And I'm hanging in there, I'm gonna give him a chance. He doing this, he doing that, whatever. But that was the boundary with myself that I broke. I allowed myself to be uncomfortable and to continue to be uncomfortable. And from frustration, now the iron fist is there on someone else. Mm-hmm. Now I'm passing the responsibility of my life onto someone else. Okay. So there's a lack of boundaries internally with the self.
Okay. So if you could go back and do it differently, and now you're at year 2.5, moving towards year 3, just so everyone is clear, what would you have done differently?
Well, I would have made it very clear that I'm dating to marry. And if I'm exclusively dating you, my expectation is that we are going to be married. This is my time frame. I am not waiting. I'm not that feeling of waiting feels so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And it feels so, then there's resentment that comes from that. You feel like I'm waiting, or you feel like I moved somewhere to be with someone, then that resentment builds. And so instead of that, being very clear, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to have. I'm going to have it with you, or I'm going to have it with someone else. But this is what I'm going to have for my life. We can do it together or not. Cool. Okay. That approach, focusing on what I want, is what I help my clients to do, and not to force what I want in my life onto someone else. It's not necessary. It's not necessary.
Okay. So Aishia, help us understand, what will be the difference between a boundary and an ultimatum? Because they're clearly cousins, but they, in the same aspect, are completely two different things. They're cousins from different sides of the family. One's on the mom's side, one's on the dad's side, but they're related. Let's put it that way. But what would you say is the difference between a boundary and an ultimatum?
So this is an internal experience. And so the ultimatum even is for yourself. And you got to ask yourself, you're in a situation that you don't like. How long are you going to stay in? You're not getting your needs met. It's not going in the direction that you want to go. You're uncomfortable. You feel embarrassed because all your other friends have this and you don't. And so if you're uncomfortable, you're embarrassed, you're not satisfied, what are you doing about it? Because putting it on someone else is passing the buck. The buck stops here. What are you doing about it? So are you staying? Because you can't make someone want something they're not ready for. So that it was the inability to accept who he was in that moment and being focused on who he could be as opposed to who he was then. And I'll be honest with you, he hasn't changed at all. And neither have I. That's big facts. Right. And so why would I or anyone else remain uncomfortable? For what reason? Why? That's the ultimatum. What are you going to do about your life to create what you want?
So at what point did you come to that conclusion? Because, as you continue to tell the story, you two were playing chicken, as you put it, right? You're waiting for him to propose and you're like, no, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. You don't believe me. I'm going to leave. And it sounded like, as I'm listening to your story, that you had positioned yourself into a corner that your ego would not allow you to be vulnerable enough to come out of. Would that be accurate?
I think it would be accurate to say ego and emotional immaturity.
Okay, fair. That's fair. And so I think the time period was about 3 months. You guys were going back and forth playing this game of will she or won't she? This is the part that fascinated me when you said, so it got to the day it's time to move to Las Vegas, where, by the way, she's now practicing, and you're packing up your car. Now, I'm thinking as you're telling this story, she is playing this whole thing out. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. I am like applauding her. I'm like, she is going to ride this out. So you're packing the car. He comes over and he's now helping you pack the car.
He sure did. Mm-hmm.
Now, what did you think when he started helping you pack the car? Are you thinking I'm running out of time? I got to pull one more. I got to play the big joker now. I mean, what is it that for you spades players? Let me just put that out there. Mm-hmm. So are you thinking, what were you thinking as he's packing the car? I know what you ultimately said, but what were you thinking before you said that statement?
It seemed very surreal because I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be married. This is me at the time, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be with him. And so when he came over, I'm like, okay, it's about to happen. Like, it's going to be this big moment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, baby, please don't leave me, baby. You know what I mean? I'm ready. Right, I'm ready to have my little moment, you know, and it's going to be dope. And I'm going to tell all my friends. And he was putting the stuff in the car, calm as a cucumber, didn't flinch. And the whole time I'm like, this isn't what I want to do, but you're being impossible, or you're not giving me anything to work with. And so even an engagement ring that would have said, okay, well, we can talk about a wedding later. He didn't move an inch. And that in and of itself was starting to infuriate me as well. And so in my mind, I never thought I would move ever. It never crossed my mind. It wasn't real. I didn't even want to go. Mm-hmm. And so my friend drove with me and her boyfriend is like, when you leaving? I was like, oh, I can't leave now. I said something like, it's too hot. This me, because I didn't want to leave. And so her boyfriend said, you got more delays in the airport. If you're going to leave. So
say no more.
I said, we leaving tomorrow. And because I'm waiting all this time. I'm like, the ring is coming. I don't want to leave, but I done sold all my stuff. What I'm finna do? You know what I mean? He says, you got more delays in the airport. We out.
Man, you were committed to the script.
Yes. He came over. I'm like putting myself in the car a whole time. I'm like, this isn't very real. He put everything in the car. And in that moment, I'm like, is this what we're doing? It's a Tyler Perry moment. It's a Tyler Perry moment.
Right.
That's what we're going to do? Oh, okay. I'm not the one you want to do that with. I'm going to Las Vegas.
Okay. So I'm going to post her videos, Aisha's videos, in order as she's telling this story. So I want you all to just listen to all 4 of them. I think it's a total of 4. Mm-hmm. I mean, just a tremendous story. Now, I want to ask you this question. Short answer. In hindsight, do you think at that moment you overplayed your hand?
Play no games, tell no lies. It's Relationship Unscripted with your host, Dat Dude, Coach Kenn.